No.10 Magnesia, December 190 BC, a cold wind moves across the plain of Lydia in what is now western Turkey. Two rivers, the Hermus and the Phrygios, hem in a killing field that has been prepared, perhaps unwittingly, by the largest army in the known world. Antiochus III the Great, ruler of the Seleucid Empire, has assembled 70,000 men to defend everything he owns. His empire stretches from the Aegean coast all the way to the borders of India. He commands 12,000 cavalry, 54 war elephants, thousands of archers, slingers, mercenaries drawn from every province between Greece and the Hindu Kush, and at the front of his line, a weapon designed for one purpose only: scythed chariots. Wooden platforms drawn by 4 horses each. Blades bolted to the axles blades on the yokes. Blades everywhere. The chariots exist to charge into massed infantry and cut men in half at the waist. Earlier centuries, they had shattered Persian formations. They had terrified Greeks. Antiochus is confident. He has to be. Standing across from him with barely 30,000 men is a Roman general named Lucius Cornelius Scipio, and standing beside Lucius, quiet, watchful, coughing into his cloak because he is ill with a fever, is his older brother, Scipio Africanus, the man who broke Hannibal at Zama 12 years earlier. The Romans are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. They are on foreign soil. They are led, on paper, by the younger, less experienced brother. Antiochus should win this. The battle opens, and Antiochus, riding personally at the head of his right-wing cavalry, charges. He smashes the Roman left. He pursues fleeing enemies for miles. He does not look back. He does not know that the moment he stops looking back, he has lost the war. On the Seleucid left, King Eumenes of Pergamon, Rome's Greek ally, does something the ancient world had never seen. Instead of charging the scythed chariots head-on, he sends his lightest cavalry javelineers and horse archers sweeping around them. They shower the chariot horses with missiles. The horses panic. They bolt. They turn and stampede back into the Seleucid lines that were supposed to protect them. Antiochus's own weapon becomes the instrument of his destruction, blades spinning through his own men. The phalanx breaks apart trying to escape. The elephants, panicked, trample their own handlers. And when Antiochus finally rides back to save the day, he finds nothing to save. According to Livy, 50,000 Seleucid infantry lie dead, 3,000 cavalry, 15 elephants captured. The Romans have lost, in the accounts that survive, 349 men. Modern historians think the real Roman losses were closer to 5,000 still, one of the most lopsided results in ancient warfare. But the number that matters is not on the battlefield. It is in the treaty that follows. Antiochus surrenders every foot of ground west of the Taurus Mountains. He agrees to pay 15,000 talents of silver, roughly 400 tons of it, over the next 12 years. He surrenders his fleet, he surrenders his elephants, and he surrenders something no Seleucid king had ever surrendered before: the idea that Asia was somehow beyond Rome's reach. From that afternoon on, the Hermus, the door of Asia, stood open. Rome would walk through it for the next 4 centuries. Antiochus the Great, the man who once dreamed of restoring Alexander's empire, died 3 years later trying to loot a temple to pay Rome's indemnity. His killers were peasants defending a shrine. The largest Hellenistic kingdom in the world had been humbled by a Roman force that outnumbered more than 2 to 1, and the age of the phalanx was dying with him. Number 9. Cynoscephalae, June 197 BC. A storm breaks over eastern Thessaly in the night. When dawn comes, the fog is so thick that a man cannot see the friend at his elbow. On a low ridge called the Dog's Heads, so named because the twin summits look like the ears of a hound crouching, 2 armies are sleeping in the mist, and neither of them knows the other is there. King Philip V of Macedon commands roughly 25,000 men. His army is built around the weapon that had conquered the known world under Alexander 130 years earlier, the Macedonian phalanx. 16,000 men wielding sarissas, pikes 18 to 21 feet long. When they close ranks in formation, 5 spearheads project from every man in the front rank. The phalanx is not a formation. It is a moving forest of iron, and for 3 centuries, no army on earth has been able to break it in open battle. Across the ridge, the Roman consul, Titus Quinctius Flaminius, commands about 26,000 men. He is 32 years old, a philosophical Greek-speaking Roman who genuinely admires Greek culture and speaks the language fluently. He would rather be negotiating than fighting, but Philip has refused to leave Thessaly, so on this foggy June morning, both generals send out patrols. Philip's patrol reaches the top of the ridge first. The Roman patrol arrives seconds later, blundering out of the mist. A skirmish erupts in the fog. Neither commander knows what is happening. Both send reinforcements. The skirmish grows into a battle. The battle grows into a full engagement. Neither Philip nor Flamininus chose this ground. Neither wanted this fight today. The fog is deciding for them. Philip pushes his phalanx up the far side of the ridge. On level ground, on chosen ground, the phalanx is untouchable. But this is not level ground. This is a hill studded with rocks and gullies and dips. The phalangites cross the crest and thunder down onto the Roman left, and the Romans buckle. They fall back. Some are speared, some are trampled, some are simply driven downhill by the sheer physics of 16-foot pikes advancing in unison. And then something happens that no phalanx commander had ever really thought through. Philip's right side is winning. His left side has not yet formed up. It is still coming up the ridge. Disordered gaps opening between units as men climb over rocks and step around trees. And a Roman tribune, whose name the ancient sources do not record, notices. He peels 20 miniples of Roman infantry, about 2,000 men, off the advancing right wing and swings them behind Philip's phalanx. He hits it in the rear. A phalanx cannot turn. It can only face one direction. The 21-foot pikes that make it invincible from the front make it helpless when attacked from behind. The Roman short swords, the gladius, go to work. The Romans butcher the Macedonian rear at close quarters, working their way inward, chopping through men who cannot even bring their weapons to bear. On the other side of the field, the Macedonian phalangites, who had been winning, turn to see what is happening, raise their sarissas vertically in the ancient sign of surrender, and Flamininus, who understands Greek custom, moves to accept it. But other Roman units, still fighting, do not know what the raised pikes mean. They charge. They kill the surrendering Macedonians where they stand. Polybius, the Greek historian who probably interviewed survivors, records Macedonian dead at 8,000 and 5,000 captured. Roman losses are 700. But the death toll on the ridge is not what makes Cynoscephalae one of the most important battles in Roman history. What died on the dogs' heads was an idea. The Macedonian phalanx, the weapon of Alexander, the tactic that had dominated Mediterranean warfare for 3 centuries, was finished. On rough ground, against a flexible legion that could break into smaller units and exploit any gap, the phalanx was a dinosaur. Philip signed away his kingdom's independence. Rome declared the Greek cities free at the Isthmian Games the following year to genuine tears of joy from the Greeks, who had no idea what Roman freedom actually meant. Within 30 years, Macedonia would be a Roman province. And every Hellenistic kingdom watching from the sidelines learned the same lesson. If the fog rolls in and you meet the Romans on ground you did not choose, you die. Number 8. Aquae Sextiae, 102 BC, somewhere in Provence, on a slope of Mount Saint Victoire, near a Roman way station known for its hot springs, Gaius Marius is watching his men dig. They are digging a camp on high ground overlooking a narrow river valley. Below them, spread across the countryside for miles, is a moving nation, the Teutones and the Ambrones, Germanic tribes on the march. Men, women, children, wagons, cattle, everything they own. Ancient sources put their numbers as high as 300,000 souls, of whom perhaps 100,000 to 200,000 are warriors. They are looking for land. They have already destroyed 5 Roman armies. At Arausio, 3 years earlier, they slaughtered 80,000 Roman soldiers in a single afternoon. It was the worst Roman defeat since Cannae. Rome was so terrified that Marius, a rough farm boy from Arpinum, was made consul 5 years in a row, an unconstitutional emergency measure. And he has spent those years rebuilding the Roman army from the ground up. Marius has done something no consul had done before. He has recruited from the landless poor. He has professionalized them. He has issued them heavier packs so they can carry their own supplies and reduced the baggage train that used to slow armies to a crawl. His men, sneering, call themselves Marius's mules. The name will stick for 500 years. And now Marius watches from his hilltop as the Ambronus, the vanguard of the Germanic migration, spot his camp and boil out of their wagons for a fight. Marius does not let his men move. For 3 days, as the Ambronus jeer and the Teutones catcall Roman women who have followed the army, Marius refuses battle. He is letting his men study the enemy. He is letting them get used to the sight, the sound, the size of these howling giants. He knows that at Arausio, Roman soldiers had broken from fear before they had even engaged. He will not let that happen again. On the 4th day, the Ambrones attack the water party at the river. Roman troops go down for water. Ligurian auxiliaries in the Roman ranks recognize the Ambroni war cry as an old word for their own ancestors and shout it back. What starts as a scuffle over water becomes a slaughter along the riverbank. The Ambrones, halfway across the shallows, are butchered in the water. When their women see their husbands running, they attack the fugitives with sticks and axes to force them back into the fight. Then the women die too. That was only the appetizer. The main Teutone army musters the next day and forms up below the Roman position. Marius has already prepared his trap. In the night, he has sent 3,000 men under a tribune named Marcus Claudius Marcellus around behind the German army, hidden in a wood. When the Teutones charge uphill against the Roman line, Marius holds them, then holds them, then holds them, letting them exhaust themselves against the slope. And when they are spent and gasping, Marcellus's 3,000 men burst out of the trees at their rear. The Teutones, sandwiched between the hidden force and Marius's legionaries, break. Roman sources claim 90,000 Teutones killed and 20,000 captured, including their king Teutobod. Modern estimates are lower, but still catastrophic, perhaps 100,000 dead when you include the non-combatants. The Ambrones and Teutones ceased to exist as peoples on that afternoon. And here is the detail that ancient writers would not stop repeating. When the surrender was arranged, 300 Teutone women were to be handed over to the Romans. They begged the consul to let them serve in the temples of Ceres and Venus instead. Marius refused. That night, in their wagons, the women strangled their own children so their offspring would not grow up as slaves. Then they hanged themselves with the ropes they had used on their children. The next morning, Roman soldiers walked through the camp and found them arm in arm, mothers and daughters, still holding on to each other. The valley, according to Plutarch, was so choked with corpses that for years afterward, local vineyards grew fantastically well, feeding on the buried dead. The name of the pass in Provençal folklore for centuries was La Putrida, the rotten place. Marius had saved Italy. He had also invented something new, a killing on an industrial scale that made even Roman veterans queasy. Number 7. Vercellae, 30 July 101 BC. Marius is not done. The Teutones are dead. Their allies, the Cimbri, the largest of the Germanic tribes, are still out there. They have crossed the Alps. They are in the Po Valley, and they do not know their allies are dead. When Marius meets their envoys, and they demand land for themselves, and their brothers, Marius produces the captive king Teutobod in chains. The Cimbri king Boiorix, a giant of a man in the accounts, that survive is not intimidated. He challenges Marius to a battle, to name the day and the place. Marius names 3 days from now, on the Rhodian plain near Vercellae, a Roman colony in what is now northern Italy. It is high summer. The Po Valley, in late July, is one of the hottest places in Europe. Marius has thought about this. He forms up his 54,000 legionaries with the sun at their backs. Boiorix, forming up his 180,000 warriors, including 15,000 heavy cavalry, has the sun in his eyes, the wind in his face, and a cloud of dust from the Roman advance blowing straight into his teeth. The Cimbri cavalry charges. They are the finest heavy cavalry in Europe. They wear iron helmets shaped like the heads of predatory animals. They carry heavy lances. And they charge into the Roman cavalry commanded by a young officer named Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a name Rome will come to hate within 20 years. Sulla feigns retreat. The Cimbri cavalry pursue, driven forward by their own momentum. Sulla wheels, gets them into a killing ground against a river, and butchers them. Then he turns and takes the Cimbri infantry in the flank. The Cimbri infantry, coming forward through the heat and the dust and the sun, are already dying of exhaustion. The Alpine tribesmen have never fought in Italian summer. Their armor cooks them alive. Their throats close from dust. When the Roman lines meet them in the 5th or 6th hour of the day, the Cimbri warriors are already staggering. What follows is not a battle, it is a butcher's work. Roman sources give varying numbers. Livy says 160,000 Cimbri killed. Plutarch says 120. Orosius says 140,000. Roman losses were probably around 1,000. Boiorix died in the front rank. 2 other Cimbri chiefs, Cleodicus and Caesorix, were captured alive. But the horror was still coming. The Cimbri camp was defended by the wagons, and behind the wagons were the women. When they saw their men breaking, they climbed to the top of the wagons in black robes and killed every Cimbri warrior who tried to run past them. Then, when the Romans broke through the wagon wall, they killed their own children. They tied ropes to their own necks or to the horns of the oxen and hanged themselves. They cut their own throats. Some, unable to bear killing their infants, threw the babies under the hooves of Roman cavalry to be trampled cleanly. The German nation that had terrified Rome for 13 years was extinguished on a single summer day in a single valley. The Cimbri simply ceased to be a people. Marius was hailed at Rome as the 3rd founder of the city after Romulus and Camillus. He was elected to a 6th consulship, and in the last dust of the Cimbrian War, an unknown lieutenant named Sulla began his career. Within 2 decades, those 2 men, Marius and Sulla, would tear Rome apart in the first civil war in her history. The Germanic peoples would return to Rome's frontier in centuries to come. But no Roman ever again forgot what happened at the 2 ends of a summer at Aquae Sextiae and Vercellae, when Marius invented the modern army and used it to kill something like 250,000 people in 12 months. Number 6. Actium, 2 September 31st BC, the Ionian Sea, off the western coast of Greece, in the mouth of the Gulf of Ambracia, 2 fleets are drawing up for battle. The war they are here to decide has been going for 13 years ever since Julius Caesar's assassination broke the Second Triumvirate. But, truthfully, the war is older than that. This is the last day of the Roman Republic, and everyone standing on a deck this morning knows it. Mark Antony has 230 heavy warships, big vessels, quinqueremes, and 6s, and 7s, and even a few 10s, gigantic floating fortresses with towers on their decks and catapults at their prows. He has 20,000 legionaries as marines. He has Cleopatra beside him, aboard her flagship with 60 Egyptian galleys stuffed with the treasury of Egypt. Antony is the finest Roman general alive. He held the center at Philippi 11 years earlier. He is the last man alive who fought beside Julius Caesar, and he is dying by inches. His fleet has been under blockade for 6 months. His crews are down with malaria from the marshes around Actium. His grain supply has been cut off by his enemy's admiral, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, who has been peeling off Antony's supply bases one by one, Methone in the south, then Lucas, then Corcyra, then Petra. Antony's men are deserting. His allied kings are slipping away in the night. On the other side of the water, Octavian Caesar's 32-year-old heir has 400 lighter Liburnian warships, faster, more agile, armed with a nasty new weapon Agrippa invented called the Harpax, a heavy iron grapnel fired from a catapult that hooks onto an enemy ship and reels it in with a winch. Octavian is not a soldier. He is a politician who gets seasick and he spends most of the battle below decks. But Agrippa is a soldier. And Agrippa has planned everything. Antony's plan, when it comes, is desperate. He knows he has lost the campaign already. He knows he cannot fight a stand-up sea battle with sick crews and rotting timbers. But if he can punch a hole through the middle of Octavian's line, he can escape to Egypt with Cleopatra, the treasury, and enough ships to rebuild. So he loads his heaviest ships with sails on warships, in battle. Nobody uses sails in a sea fight. Sails get burned. Sails get in the way, unless you plan to run. Around noon, the wind shifts and Antony pushes forward. The 2 fleets grind together off the promontory. Agrippa's Liburnians dance around the big galleys, ramming their oars, showering them with fire arrows, hooking them with the Harpax. The Egyptian squadron at the rear, under Cleopatra, watches. Then, as a gap opens in the front lines, Cleopatra's 60 ships raise their purple sails and run. They punch through the middle and head south. Antony sees. Antony makes a choice that will damn him in every history written by Rome afterward. He transfers to a smaller quinquereme, abandons his flagship, and follows her. His fleet, seeing the commander flee, disintegrates. Some ships surrender. Some try to fight. Some burn. When it is over, more than 5,000 of Antony's men are dead, and 250 of his ships are sunk or captured. Octavian has lost around 2,500 men. Within a year, Antony and Cleopatra are both dead in Alexandria. He by his own sword, she by an asp. Octavian returns to Rome, closes the doors of the Temple of Janus, and 4 years later takes the name Augustus. The Republic that had lasted 480 years is finished. The Empire, the machinery of one-man rule that will govern Rome for the next 500 years, is born on a Greek beach on a September afternoon. And Actium, though its casualty count is modest, by Roman standards changes the shape of the world more completely than any land battle in the countdown. Number 5. Pharsalus, 9 August 48 BC. On a plain in Thessaly, near the modern town of Pharsala, in central Greece, 2 Roman armies are staring at each other, and neither is willing to move. This has been going on for weeks. Pompey the Great, 58 years old, 3-time consul, conqueror of the pirates, conqueror of the East, holds the high ground with 45,000 to 63,000 men and 7,000 cavalry. He is a professional. He knows what he is doing. His plan is to starve out the enemy without a battle. Caesar's army is smaller, hungrier, and further from home. Time is on Pompey's side. Julius Caesar, 52 years old, has 22,000 to 37,000 legionaries and 1,000 cavalry. He is running out of grain. His men have been reduced to eating a kind of bread made from a root called chara, which they mix with milk. His veterans have been with him since the Gallic Wars, some for 12 or 13 years. They are the best trained troops in Roman history. They are also getting hungry. Caesar has offered Pompey battle every day for weeks. Pompey has refused, but Pompey's officers, the senators and old aristocrats who have followed him east, are becoming insufferable. They are already dividing up the offices they will hold when the war is won. They are arguing about who will get Caesar's house. They accuse Pompey of dragging out the war to keep his own command. Some call him Agamemnon, king of kings, mocking his caution. Under this pressure, Pompey does the one thing he had promised himself never to do. He comes down off the high ground. He forms up in the open plain. Caesar cannot believe what he is seeing. He orders his tent packed, his baggage loaded, everything ready for the march that he was about to order. Then he sees Pompey's line and starts laughing. Pompey has massed his cavalry, 7-1 numerical superiority over Caesar's. On his left, his plan is obvious. Sweep around Caesar's right wing, get behind his infantry, roll up the line. It is exactly what Caesar would do. So Caesar does something no ancient general had done before. He pulls one cohort from each of his 3 lines, roughly 3,000 of his best veterans, and hides them behind his cavalry as a 4th line. He gives them one order. When Pompey's cavalry charges, do not throw your javelins. Use them as spears. Stab upward at their faces. He says something even more specific, and Caesar himself records it in his memoirs. He tells them, aim for the eyes. Young men, he says, care about how they look, scar their faces, and they will run. The battle opens. Pompey's cavalry, under the veteran commander Titus Labienus, Caesar's own former lieutenant, now serving Pompey, sweeps forward. They break through Caesar's outnumbered horsemen. They wheel to charge the Roman infantry from behind, and they run into 3,000 Caesarian veterans coming at them with pila as pikes, jabbing upward at the faces of the aristocratic young Roman cavalrymen. It works exactly as Caesar predicted. The horsemen recoil, they panic, they wheel and flee. The 4th line pursues them and then swings around Pompey's exposed left wing. And behind them, in coordination Caesar had drilled into his men for months, Caesar's 3rd infantry line, held in reserve, moves forward to join the fight. Pompey's army, hit in the flank and hit in the front simultaneously, breaks. Pompey rides back to his camp. He sits in his tent. He seems to have understood in that moment that the republic he had spent his life defending was finished. When his own men fled through the camp, Pompey took off his general's cloak, changed into simple clothes, and rode out the back gate. He would run for Egypt. Egypt would murder him and send his head to Caesar. Roman losses at Pharsalus were 200 to 215. Pompey lost between 6,000 and 15,000 killed, and 24,000 surrendered on the field. When it was over, Caesar walked among the enemy dead. He saw Roman senators. He saw men he had grown up with. He saw the sons of the old families. Sources report that he stood among the bodies and said in a voice loud enough for his officers to hear, "Hoc voluerunt." They would have it so. 3 words, it might have been the coldest sentence in Roman history. Everyone who had died on that plain, Caesar was saying, had chosen this. Nothing was his fault. And to make sure everyone understood, he ordered every surviving senator and knight who had fought against him pardoned. Some of them, including a certain Marcus Junius Brutus, would repay him 4 years later on the floor of the Senate House with 23 knife wounds. Pharsalus made Caesar dictator, dictator made him a god, and the god got himself killed. But without Pharsalus, none of it would have happened. Number 4, Philippi, October 42, billion C. The world after Caesar is a broken world. His killers, Brutus and Cassius, have raised the eastern provinces in the name of the Republic. Mark Antony and the young Octavian, Caesar's heir, have joined forces with a third man, Lepidus, to hunt them down. Now the two sides are meeting in Macedonia on a plain west of a town called Philippi. 200,000 Roman soldiers, the largest concentration of Roman troops on a single battlefield in the entire history of the Republic. 36 legions total, 19 for the assassins, 17 for the triumvirs. Every man on both sides is a Roman citizen. Every family in Rome has a son on that plain. The liberators, as they call themselves, are in an unbeatable position. Their camps are dug in on rising ground. Their supply lines run down to the Aegean. They have the sea. Brutus commands the right of their line. Cassius, the sharper strategist of the two, commands the left. Their plan is Pompey's plan at Pharsalus. Do not fight. Starve the enemy out. Antony and Octavian are in a bad place. They are on low, marshy ground. They have no supply base. Malaria is beginning to burn through the camps. Octavian is sick again, coughing, feverish. He has spent most of his adult career being sick at the moments that mattered. But Antony, the professional, does not give the enemy time to work. He starts building a hidden causeway through the marsh on Cassius' side of the field. He is trying to flank the liberator position. Cassius sees the movement, understands, and starts building his own countertrench. On October 3rd, in the first Battle of Philippi, the two operations collide and a scrappy, unplanned engagement erupts along the marsh. Antony's men, aggressive and hungry, storm Cassius' camp and take it. Cassius, watching from a hilltop, cannot tell what is happening in the confusion. He sees his camp overrun. He does not know that at the same moment, on the other end of the line, Brutus has broken through Octavian's forces and captured Octavian's camp. Octavian himself is missing, later found hiding in the marshes. He would claim afterward that a dream warned him to leave his tent. His enemies would say he ran. Cassius, believing everything is lost, cannot bear to be captured. He asks his freedman Pindarus to hold a sword steady. He runs onto it. It is his own birthday. He dies without ever knowing that half his army had won. Brutus, learning what has happened, weeps. He calls Cassius the last of the Romans. Then he takes command of both armies. For 20 days, Brutus does what Cassius would have done. He holds position. He refuses to fight. Antony's army begins to starve. Octavian's men are sicker every day. If Brutus waits another 2 weeks, the triumvirs may fall apart on their own. But Brutus's officers grow impatient. His men, victors of the first battle, want another. On October 23rd, the second Battle of Philippi begins. Brutus comes down off the ridge, forms up on level ground, and attacks. The two armies grind against each other in the last stand-up fight of the Roman Republic. There is no maneuver. There is no genius. There is just legion against legion. Some of the men on both sides know each other, some are brothers, some are cousins. When Brutus's line finally cracks, it cracks catastrophically. Antony's cavalry rolls up the flank. Brutus retreats with about a third of his army in decent order, but the war is over. That night, in a wood, Brutus turns to a friend named Strato, hands him his sword, and asks him to hold it steady. He too runs onto the blade. According to Plutarch, he quoted a line of Greek before he died. Wretched valor. So you are only a name after all. Something like 40,000 Roman citizens died at Philippi over the two battles. The last army of the Republic died with Brutus and Cassius in a wood in Macedonia. What was left of Roman democracy, The assemblies and the elections and the annual councils would continue to meet for another 500 years, but it was theater. The men who mattered would from now on be soldiers, not senators. The Republic committed suicide at Philippi in an autumn wood on the same sword twice. Number 3. Milvian Bridge, 2890-312 AD, the Tiber River, 2 miles north of the walls of Rome. A stone bridge called the Ponte Milvio has spanned the river here since 109 BC. Every road from the north funnels across it. Whoever controls it controls Rome. On the far side of the bridge, dug in with his back to the water, is Maxentius. He is the son of a former emperor. He controls Italy and North Africa. He is defending his own capital city. He has 25,000 men, including the elite Praetorian Guard, the imperial bodyguard, that has made and unmade emperors for 300 years. And he has done something strange. He has broken the stone bridge. He is not entirely sure why. Perhaps he intended to fight from behind the wall of Rome. Perhaps he changed his mind at the last minute. Whatever the reason, he has sent engineers to construct a pontoon bridge of boats just next to the Milvian Bridge, and now his army is on the far side, the wrong side, with the river at its back and a broken bridge behind it. On the other side is Flavius Valerius Constantinus, Constantine, 40 years old, son of the Emperor Constantius, ruler of Britain, Gaul, and Spain. He has marched an army of 40,000 down through the Alps in a lightning campaign, sacked Turin, taken Milan, stormed Verona. He is outnumbered here, perhaps 40,000 to 100,000 in some ancient sources, though modern scholars think both armies were closer to 25,000. What he does not have on paper, he thinks he has in something else. The night before, or perhaps some days earlier, depending on which source you trust, Constantine has seen something. 2 different Christian writers report it differently. The historian Eusebius, who claims to have heard it from Constantine himself, says, "The emperor saw a cross of light above the sun at midday with Greek words attached, on tuto Nika. In this sign conquer." The other, Lactantius, says Constantine had a dream in which he was told to mark his soldiers' shields with a symbol, the chi rho, the first 2 letters of the Greek name of Christ, Constantine. Whether from vision or from calculation, orders every man in his army to paint the sign on his shield. He is 40 years old. He has spent his life climbing over emperors' corpses to reach the top. He has already worshipped Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. What is one more god if the god delivers? The battle opens with a cavalry action. Constantine's veterans, hardened from years of fighting on the Rhine, punch through Maxentius's mounted troops. Then the infantry lines meet. The Praetorians, Rome's most famous soldiers, fight where they stand and are cut to pieces where they stand. Slowly, then quickly, Maxentius's army is pushed back toward the river. His right and left break, only the Praetorians hold, and they hold until they die. The rout begins. Maxentius's men try to retreat across the pontoon bridge. The bridge, either overloaded or deliberately cut, collapses under them. Thousands of men in armor go into the Tiber. Maxentius himself, riding a horse in full armor, is swept into the water and drowns. When his body is fished out downstream the next day, it is decapitated. His head is stuck on a pike and paraded through Rome on Constantine's triumph. The Praetorian Guard, the corps that had murdered emperors and sold the throne to the highest bidder for centuries, is dissolved on Constantine's orders. It never reforms. And the man who won under the sign of the cross does something the Roman world has never seen. The next year, in Milan, he signs an edict of toleration that legalizes Christianity across the empire. A generation later, Christianity is favored. 2 generations after that, it is the state religion. There were probably fewer than 10 million Christians in the world at the time of Milvian Bridge, in an empire of maybe 60 million. Because of that afternoon at the pontoon bridge, Christianity became the majority faith of Europe within 100 years. It became the faith of North Africa, then Ethiopia, then the Slavs, and the Germans, and the Vikings, and the Irish. It became the faith of half the human race. The bridge is still there. You can walk across it today. Below it, in the mud, are still buried the bones of the men whose deaths made the West Christian. Number 2, Catalaunian Plains, 20 June, 451 AD. A flat plain in Champagne, in what is now northeastern France, between the towns of Troyes and Chalons. This is the last great victory of Rome, and it is fought by an army in which the Roman citizens are almost a minority. Attila the Hun has come west. He is 45 years old, ruler of a horse empire that stretches from the Rhine to the Volga. He is a small, dark, wide-shouldered man with a flat nose and small, deep-set eyes. His enemies say his gaze can strike terror at 20 feet. His stated grievance against the Western Empire is a marriage proposal. The Emperor Valentinian III has a sister named Honoria, who, unhappy at being kept in a nunnery, has sent Attila her ring and asked him to rescue her. Attila has treated the ring as a proposal and now demands half the Western Empire as her dowry. Whatever the pretext, he has crossed the Rhine at the head of an army, perhaps 50,000 to 100,000 strong, mostly Huns, but also Ostrogoths, Gepids, Rugians, Scyrians, and other subject peoples. They have sacked Metz on Easter Sunday. They have burned Rheims. They have sacked Cambrai. They are moving on Orleans when the Roman commander in Gaul, Flavius Aetius, catches them. Aetius is the last Roman general in the classical sense. He grew up as a hostage among the Huns. He speaks their language. He fought beside Attila in earlier civil wars. He knows how the Hunnic army thinks because he trained with it. Now, in 451, he is racing to save the West from his old friend. His army is a coalition. He has some Roman regulars, but the mass of his force is Visigoths under their old king Theodoric I, plus Alans under a king named Sangiban whose loyalty is suspect, plus Franks, Burgundians, Saxons, Armoricans, and Salian Gauls. It is barely an army. It is a truce between peoples who have been fighting each other for generations, held together by one man's diplomacy. On the night of June 19th, Aetius's Frankish advance guard collides with Attila's Gepid rearguard in the dark. In a confused, stumbling fight in a wood, some 15,000 men die from the two sides combined before the sun rises. The next morning, Attila draws up on the plain. He puts himself and his Huns in the center. He puts his Ostrogoth allies under three brothers, sons of a Gothic king, on his left. He puts his Gepids and other allies on his right. Aetius arranges his forces in a mirror image. He puts the suspect Alans in his center, effectively as bait. He puts the Visigoths under Theodoric on his right, facing Attila's Ostrogoth allies, Goth against Goth. He takes the left himself with the Roman regulars. There is one piece of ground on the field that matters, a ridge on the Roman left. Whoever holds it commands the battle. Aetius sends men to seize it. Attila sends men to take it. The Roman force gets there first. The battle opens in the afternoon. Attila charges the center. His Huns, using the tactic they had used to conquer half the world, ride forward showering arrows and then wheel away. But the Alans, though ordered to stand, waver. Attila's charge nearly breaks through the middle. On the Roman right, Theodoric leads the Visigoth cavalry forward against the Ostrogoths. Somewhere in the melee, Theodoric goes down. His body is not found until the next day, trampled under his own horsemen. His son, Thorismund, learns of his father's death mid-battle, and something goes wrong for Attila at that moment. The Visigoths, seeing their king dead, charge with a berserk fury. They shatter the Ostrogoth line. They wheel around and take Attila's Huns in the flank. Attila is nearly killed. He falls back to his laager, his circle of wagons, and prepares to burn himself alive rather than be captured. Jordanes, writing a century later, says he had a pyre of saddles built inside his wagons. Night falls with the plain heaped with dead. Ancient sources give figures as high as 165,000 total dead. Modern historians think tens of thousands is closer, but it was staggering. Aetius, in the morning, could have finished Attila. Instead, he did something political. He let Attila go. If Attila died on the field, the Visigoths would have no reason to remain allied to Rome. Aetius wanted a threat left standing to keep his coalition together. So he told Thorismund, now king, to go home and secure his throne against his brothers. He watched Attila limp east across the Rhine with what was left of his army. Attila would die 2 years later, drunk on his own wedding night, drowning in his own nosebleed. Aetius would be murdered 3 years after that by the emperor he had saved stabbed to death in the imperial palace. The Roman senator Sidonius Apollinaris said afterward that with his own hand, Valentinian had cut off his own right hand with his left. The Western Empire would fall 21 years later. But at Chalons, on a flat plain, with Franks and Goths fighting for the memory of Rome, the last classical Roman general won the last classical Roman victory, and the Huns, who had never lost a set-piece battle before, never won another one. Number 1, Zama, 19 October 202 BC. And now we come to it. The battle that ended a 118-year war, the battle that killed a century of menace, the battle that decided which language you speak, which alphabet you read, which laws your society follows. On a dusty plain in what is now Tunisia, about 130 kilometers southwest of the ruined city of Carthage, two armies are forming up. On one side, Hannibal Barca, 44 years old, the man who has terrorized the Roman world for 16 years, the man who crossed the Alps with 37 elephants, the man who won at the Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, at Cannae, where he killed 50,000 Romans in a single afternoon in the worst day in Roman military history. He commands 40,000 to 50,000 men, 36,000 to 46,000 infantry, 4,000 cavalry, 80 war elephants. His army is a scratch force. His veterans, the men who crossed the Alps with him, are aging. His mercenaries, Ligurians and Gauls and Balearic slingers, are freshly hired. His Numidian light cavalry, once the deadliest horsemen in the world, are outnumbered by their own countrymen who have switched sides. On the other side, Publius Cornelius Scipio, 33 years old. He has been called Africanus already, though the surname is unofficial. He is the son of a Roman consul who was killed by Hannibal. He is the nephew of another Roman consul who was killed by Hannibal. His whole family died fighting this man. He has spent his career studying Hannibal, imitating Hannibal, learning Hannibal. He commands about 29,000 to 30,000 men, 23,000 to 24,000 infantry. And here is the number that decides everything. 6,100 cavalry, because Scipio has done what no Roman commander before him thought to do. He has courted the Numidian prince Massinissa, a young warrior whose family Hannibal helped destroy, and Massinissa has switched sides with his Numidian horsemen. Rome, for the first time in the Second Punic War, has cavalry superiority. The night before the battle, the two commanders met between the lines. Both were young enough men, both were curious about each other, both understood exactly what tomorrow would decide. According to Livy, they stood together for a long moment in silence, each with his interpreter, staring at each other. Then Hannibal offered peace. He offered to hand over Spain, Sicily, Sardinia, every island in the western Mediterranean, everything but Africa. Scipio refused. He said, according to the accounts, that Carthage had broken every truce it had ever signed and that only battle would settle this. They parted. The next morning, the battle opens with Hannibal's elephants, 80 of them, trumpeting, massive, the single largest concentration of war elephants in a Roman battle. Scipio has prepared. He has drilled his men to open lanes in their formation as the elephants approach. He has ordered his trumpeters to blow shrilly and his hastati to bang their swords on their shields the moment the elephants come near. And it works better than he could have hoped. Some of the elephants, unnerved by the noise, turn and charge back into Hannibal's own line, scattering his Numidian cavalry. Others run down the lanes Scipio has opened, straight through the Roman formation out the back, and are then picked off by javelins. The elephant charge fails. Then the cavalry engagement on the wings. Massinissa's Numidians and the Roman cavalry drive off the Carthaginian horse and pursue them off the field. Now the two infantry lines meet. Hannibal has arranged his men in three ranks. Mercenaries first, then Carthaginian, and Libyan citizens, then his old veterans from Italy at the back. He is not being cruel to the mercenaries. He is doing something ingenious. He is using them to blunt Rome's superior manpower before his best troops close in. The mercenaries fight. They are defeated. When they retreat, the second line, the Carthaginians, refuses to open ranks. So the mercenaries, seeing themselves abandoned, turn and attack their own second line. The whole front becomes a chaos of Roman legionaries and Carthaginian mercenaries and Carthaginian citizens, all killing each other in a bloody mass in front of the field. Polybius says that when Scipio's men finally pushed forward, they were slipping in blood, tripping over corpses piled so deep they could not find footing. Now Hannibal has one line left. His veterans. The men who crossed the Alps 16 years earlier, perhaps 15,000 of them. Aging, sunburned, terrifying. Scipio, seeing them, calls a halt. He drags his 3 lines through the piles of dead. He reforms the Roman line, with all his best infantry, hastati and principes, and triarii extended into a single long formation to prevent being outflanked. And then he charges, the 2 lines clash. It is even legion against legion, essentially, because Hannibal's veterans have been Roman trained by 16 years of fighting Romans in Italy. They hold. They push back. For a long moment at Zama, on the plain outside Carthage, on the afternoon that ended the Second Punic War, Hannibal is winning against Scipio, and then, over the ridgeline, come the Roman and Numidian cavalry. They have chased the Carthaginian horse 10 miles across the desert. They have wheeled around and returned to the field, and they come down on the rear of Hannibal's veterans. Cannae, in reverse. Scipio's plan all along has been to use his cavalry superiority to encircle the enemy from behind, exactly as Hannibal had done to the Romans 14 years earlier at Cannae. The lesson had been paid for in Roman blood. The Roman had learned it. Hannibal's veterans are surrounded, and they die. Nearly all of them. Ancient sources give 20,000 Carthaginian dead and 20,000 captured. Roman losses are 1,500 killed and thousands wounded. Hannibal himself escapes with a handful of horsemen. He rides to Carthage in the dust and enters the Senate covered in his own dried blood. He tells them the war is lost. He tells them they must sue for peace. And so Carthage does. The peace terms are savage. Carthage surrenders every ship except 10, surrenders every elephant, cedes all Spain, pays 10,000 talents of silver over 50 years, promises never again to make war anywhere without Rome's permission. Hannibal himself would live another 19 years, exiled working as an advisor to various kings against Rome, hunted from court to court until he took poison in a village on the Black Sea, rather than be taken alive. He was 64. His last words, according to Livy, were, "Let us relieve the Romans of their long anxiety." Scipio Africanus, the 33-year-old who beat him, would die within 20 years, too driven from Rome by political enemies, dying quietly on his country estate at Liternum. He asked to be buried there, not in Rome. He wrote in his own epitaph, "Ungrateful fatherland, you will not even have my bones." Rome, having killed the Carthaginian threat at Zama, would nurse a paranoid grudge against the ruined city for 50 years. Cato the Elder ended every Senate speech, whatever the topic, with the same sentence: Ceterum censeo Carthaginem esse delendum. Furthermore, I think Carthage must be destroyed. In 146 BC, they did. They burned Carthage for 17 days. They killed or enslaved every survivor. They plowed the site under, but that was epilogue. The real death of Carthage happened on an autumn afternoon in 202 BC, on a plain in Tunisia, when the master fought the student and the student won. 10 battles, millions of dead, and a world we still live inside. Because of Magnesia, Rome walked into Asia and did not stop until she reached the Euphrates. Because of Cynoscephalae, the phalanx of Alexander died and the legion became the master of the Mediterranean. Because of Aquae Sextiae and Vercellae Marius, invented the professional army that would rule the West for 400 years, and the Germanic peoples learned to fear the Roman name for a generation. Because of Actium, the Republic died, and the Empire was born. Because of Pharsalus, Julius Caesar became dictator and the doorway to Augustus opened. Because of Philippi, the last defenders of the old Republic, died on the same sword. Because of the Milvian bridge, half the world became Christian. Because of Chalons, the Huns broke and rode home. And because of Zama, Rome killed her greatest enemy and became what she was meant to become, the machine that would digest the ancient world and remake it in her own image. There are historians who will tell you that history is not made by battles, that deep currents of economics and demography and disease do all the real work, and generals only ride the wave. They are half right. But every one of these 10 battles turned a corner that the world would never turn back. Every one of them, if it had gone the other way, would have given us a different alphabet, a different god, a different map. That is what makes them the bloodiest battles that mattered, not the ones with the biggest body counts. The ones where the bodies bought something you can still see out your window. If this countdown changed how you think about Roman history, hit that like button now. It tells YouTube to show this video to more people who care about the ancient world. And subscribe if you want to keep exploring the days that made the modern world. Drop a comment and tell us which battle deserved the #1 spot. Tell us which fight we should cover next. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. Our community reaches every corner of the map, and every one of you keeps history alive by being here. Thank you for watching. These men and their deaths deserve to be remembered, because we are all in ways we barely notice, still living in the world they made.